Okay, so I'm just gonna go full screen, and then hopefully, it'll be all right. Okay, so we're live-ish. I mean, I'm not really live, but I'm just gonna put this out as it is, no edits, because we don't have time. Things are too
Yeah,
too
sounds good.
stressful. But yeah, man, like, do you want to should we go over where we're at right now with
Yeah.
the?
So just to let you know, my name is Ryan Hartwig. I went public 4 months ago as a whistleblower at Facebook, and I formed a nonprofit corporation last month, the Hartwig Foundation for Free Speech. Um, the last 4 months I've been doing interviews internationally, talking about censorship and internet censorship and what Facebook and Twitter do. But today I'm talking with Josh Hamilton. We're going to talk about the elections. So yesterday was the U.S. presidential election, and it's been nuts. I'm running on 3 hours of sleep, so we're just going to kind of go over some of the basics, where we're at, where we stand right now.
Yeah, man. I mean, it should be interesting. Let's just take a quick look at where we're at with what's been called so far. So Michigan are currently
Yeah.
saying they've got 90% of estimated votes report in, and it's sitting 49.3 to 49.1 Biden to Trump.
Yep.
Wisconsin, Biden is sitting at 49.5 with 97% report in. That's a 0.7% lead. And Pennsylvania, Trump has a 9-point lead with 76% reporting. Those are basically, as far as I can tell, the three states that matter at this point. It looks
Yeah.
like Nevada is going to go Biden, and Arizona as well, where you're at. So
Yeah.
it should be an interesting call to see what happens with those swing states. But honestly, last night when we started, I was just sitting there thinking, no, it's gonna be like a Biden washout. I'd said for basically the last year that I thought Trump was gonna win, and then about 2 weeks ago, I started looking at the polling and going, "There's no like." They were talking about a 7, 8, 9, 10 point polling gap, and I was like, "Look, as much as I
Yeah.
think it could, there's margin of error in the polls, but even then, a couple of points less than that, like, there's still basically no path to victory for Trump in the Electoral College unless his votes were literally like stacked up in the perfect places." But as soon as the votes started coming in last night, I was just like, no, he can't do it. I'd watched some stuff from Ben Shapiro yesterday afternoon about how Poland had closed in the swing states, and that made
Yeah.
me think maybe it was going to be a bit tighter than we thought. But I didn't think that I'd be sat here this morning being like, we are so close to Trump actually winning again. I mean, like, what does that say about how bad a candidate Biden really was? Like, because they just went hell for leather against everything Donald Trump said or did for 4 years, for better or worse. However much you believe he's
Yeah.
good or bad in whatever way. Like, how what does that say about Joe Biden?
I know. Like a lot of people going into it. I mean, well, first of all, Josh, the pollsters, everyone who's a pollster should lose their job. I mean, like, let's be honest. But I love this, and I'll share this link with you later. But this great guy, the company called Wick. If you search like Wick, Medium.com, David Burrell, the CEO of Wick, he's not a polling company. They just do like data analytics. And they released their article just the other day, like the day before the election, saying, "Hey, this is why the pollsters got it wrong." But yeah, I mean, up until the election, and we had COVID, so like COVID changed everything about this race because the big in these exit polls. Sorry if I'm kind of rambling. In the
Sorry.
exit polls yesterday, the biggest issue was not COVID. COVID was like the third most important issue, and the economy was still the number one issue for the exit poll. So people still, despite the COVID, people still see that the economy is bouncing back a little bit, and they realize that, hey, Trump did a really good job before COVID. But yeah, Biden's a horrible candidate. Like, he's just, I don't know how he's winning as much as he is right now. Like, you could basically take a cardboard cutout and put his face there, and like he'd still win votes, surprisingly. Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's not that surprising when you really think about just how much.
Yeah, well, I just got off a live interview just literally a few minutes ago in Brazil I was doing an interview in Portuguese with a guy with 15,000 live viewers on his YouTube, and like Brazil is concerned. I mean, the whole world is watching this election, so it's huge. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I found, yeah, we were talking about Joe Biden there, but something I noticed over the last month or two is just that anyone that came out and even attempted to critique him as a candidate just seemed to get shut down. Like I know Joe Rogan, for example, was getting a lot of shit for even like pointing out the problems with Joe Biden's age, and then like it's absolutely shocking. The thing that got me was Glenn Greenwald, like the guy who broke the Edward Snowden story.
Yeah.
He resigned from The Intercept because they wouldn't let him critique Joe Biden. Like that was literally his explanation. He said that they were trying to like push him on not critiquing Joe Biden, and he's resigned his position. Like it's one of like the journalists with some of the most integrity that you're ever gonna find. Like the guy who helped like bring Edward Snowden's story out, and he was just saying he's not that great a candidate, and editors were at The Intercept were saying no, you can't say that. Like there was part of me watching last night being like, this kind of serves them right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you to mention Glenn Greenwald, and he's kind of a big deal in Brazil. I think he has some connection to Brazil.
He lives in Brazil.
He lives in Brazil, and I have like 20,000 fans on my Twitter from Brazil, and they all hate his guts. But I think he was right in this regard. I mean, the fact that you have someone like Greenwald who's resigning over it, that says a lot. It says that the censorship is real. Like, what the hell is happening? You can't criticize a candidate for president. And then what gets me is like, we had these documents that were legally obtained that showed the Hunter Biden laptops.
Mm-hmm.
So we had these documents legally obtained, and they got censored by Twitter. But just a few, weeks or months earlier, a month earlier, we had the Trump tax returns, which were revealed illegally against the law, and like Trump and Twitter, pushed those all around. So that double standards is interesting.
Yeah, I mean the double standards just sort of keep popping up, and I can't help but feel that there's a real reckoning coming, probably in the next year or two, with social media platforms in terms of like what can and can't be said. We talked about this like on our last podcast when I had yourself and Zach McElroy on, and
yeah.
I really think that even since that conversation, like only a few months ago, things have really ramped up in terms of how much censorship or attempted censorship there seems to be. Like, for example, Facebook, and now this isn't exactly a bad move in my mind, because it proves that Facebook could regulate content if they wanted to. But they basically said that we're going to stop any sort of advertising that declares the victor of this election before it comes out. And I find that
they stopped political ads, any kind of political ads, like the week out from the election. I'm like, that's bullshit. Like, let's just be honest. Like,
I mean,
I don't agree. I mean, maybe there's just place for it, but like all that, whatever. I know it's propaganda. Like on either side, there's propaganda, right?
Mm-hmm.
Political propaganda. But like, and I don't know how you guys do in the UK, but and I'll mention the Google lawsuit in a second. But did you want to finish on that?
Yeah. Well,
subject?
I was like, honestly, I with my book coming out in February, one of the points and cases I'm going to be making is probably to do exactly what Facebook did, except across all social media platforms. I feel like in maybe the 2 months leading up to the election, we should not be allowed to pay for political advertising online. And it's in the UK, we don't even have television political advertising. We decided that was not a good thing, and that people should be forced to go through either the press or just through word of mouth. I think essentially was the point of that. And I kind of get that. I feel like honestly the most ideal situation for me would be if you said, okay, Facebook, Twitter, everyone, you cannot regulate your content. You cannot tell people what to say and not say, but they can't pay for political advertising, because it's a whole different form of freedom of speech, I think, anyway. Because
that's a good point. And here in the U.S., I think we had, I forget the name of the Supreme Court case, but here in the U.S., essentially corporations have freedom of speech rights now.
It's Citizens
So
United.
that's not going away. Yes, this is United. So that's not going away anytime soon for us. But I think you make a good point there. With regards to, Facebook and everyone ramping it up, they are. And in mid-October, about 30 to 40 huge conservative or right-leaning YouTube channels in the U.S. were just deleted from one day to the next.
Really?
So myself, yeah. So like SGT Report, X22 were two of the bigger ones. SGT Report has like 500,000, and then just boom, vanished from one day to the next. So myself and Zach Voorhees, the Google whistleblower, who if you ever want to have him on, but yeah, Zach Voorhees and we organized a fundraiser, and we raised $130,000 for a lawsuit in California that's going to go through the courts. We had our first hearing this past Tuesday, and it's funny because I listened to some of the hearing, and basically, like, the judge refuses to look at the content. She's like, I don't need to know what the content was that got deleted. And the plaintiffs, the YouTube channels, were like, well, like, YouTube, why did you delete our channels? Like, tell us why, like, what content was violating? Because there's 6 years of content, and YouTube refused. And then the judge refused to even look at the content. And they're like, okay, well, let's argue the contract. So why did you sever the, our attorney was basically like, well, why did you sever the agreement with these YouTube channels? Like, oh, we didn't. Anyways, so I have an analysis of it. I'll give it to you later. But basically, I mean, it's going to go to another court. Hopefully they'll end up at the Supreme Court. But I mean, we got to fight back because, yeah, they've really, this last couple of weeks, I really think, just to kind of summarize what's happening, it's a big tech coup, and Facebook and Twitter, they know there's going to be, if Trump wins again, there's going to be a lot of legal hurdles coming their way, fines. The FCC, Agit Pi, is going to maybe take action. Section 230 is going to be reinterpreted. So I think they see the writing on the wall, and that's why they're pushing for Biden, because they know if Trump wins, it's basically game over for their tyranny.
I mean, I guess there's kind of like an odd contradiction in what might happen with say Trump wins here, because for his Ajit Pai, his FCC head has sort of, like, quite controversially, he came out against net neutrality and the idea, just the idea, and sort of tried to challenge net neutrality. I think thus far unsuccessfully, unless something like slipped under the radar that I hadn't seen. But as far as I'm aware, he hadn't made any inroads in terms of trying to sort of reclassify the net neutrality laws that Obama put in place. But Trump would also be, and I'd be curious to see if like a freedom of speech issue came to this now 6-3 conservative Supreme Court, where they on which side they would lie. Like, would they say that corporations have the freedom to do what they want, basically, or do you think they would back the corporations, or would they back freedom of speech? Do you think they would maybe sort of declare that that these companies needed to be regulated in a different way, more like a public utility?
And that's what's fascinating too, is because in this last hearing on Tuesday, YouTube's attorney, or Google's attorney, was arguing that YouTube was exercising their First Amendment rights. So that is interesting. But with the 6-3 with the Supreme Court, another one we're watching is Jason Fick, FYK. He has a lawsuit against Facebook that might go to the Supreme Court as well. But yeah, with Section 230, I mean, I don't know if the corporate thing will come into question too much. But anyway, Jason Fick's argument with Facebook, the lawsuit, is he's basically like, look, the Ninth Circuit Court in California has misinterpreted Section 230. So it needs to be interpreted correctly by the Supreme Court. And the wording, the publisher versus a publisher, is the key detail in Jason Fick's argument, in his case. And so it's dealing with Section 230C1, I believe, instead of the main one we always talk about, which is Section 230C2. So basically, the Ninth Circuit Court in California has given these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, additional protections, immunity from themselves, and they've defined it in a way that removes the motive requirement. Because in Section 230C2, it has to be done in good faith. So there's like a motive tied to their actions. But the Ninth Circuit has reinterpreted another section of the law that removes that requirement from them to act in good faith. So that's a summary of a couple of things might be going on. But a couple of weeks ago in Malwarebytes versus Enigma, Justice Clarence Thomas issued an opinion that kind of reflected some of those same views about just the misinterpretation of Section 230 and that it needs to be interpreted by the Supreme Court.
I mean, where do you think it's going to land?
I think that right now, like a lot of the congressmen are bought and paid for. When we had a hearing, we have all these hearings, and I think a lot of Americans are sick of no action being taken. So we had a hearing a couple of months ago, and we had a Republican congressman who's like, well, we shouldn't punish companies for being successful. But and then so we had that hearing, and then just 2 weeks ago, the week after the YouTube purge in mid-October, the Department of Justice actually is suing Google for antitrust using the Sherman Act. So it's the same thing they did against AT&T and Microsoft in the 90s. So that's huge. So yeah, it is a monopoly. I think the DOJ might get some stuff done as long as Trump wins and Barr stays as Attorney General, William Barr. That will either between the DOJ and the FCC, Ajit Pai, and Trump's executive orders, I think we can really put a dent and kind of limit some of their rampant tech tyranny.
I mean, it's like the other interesting like argument in this space that's going on right now is with Spotify, because of Joe Rogan, actually, that we mentioned earlier. He was getting a lot of hate for having Alex Jones on his platform, and and he wasn't getting a whole lot of like praise. Well, he was getting praise, but he was getting also shit for the appearance of Kanye West on the show, because that was taking away votes from Joe Biden, and there was basically like I don't know how many calls there were, as far as I've read, like the executives of Spotify have just said, we are not going to regulate who our people have as guests.
That's good.
And so like, to be honest, I saw that as a big victory, because like previously YouTube have as you mentioned been a lot more heavy-handed in terms of trying to regulate content, which could signal like Spotify becoming more of a place for free expression, maybe over YouTube for podcasts. But it becomes like Spotify's just not quite the same sort of platform. And I've been wondering for a while whether like platforms like YouTube or Facebook or whatnot are going to start and see, like, at what point do they push the needle too far in terms of regulating things and then actually start to see themselves losing users.
Well, yeah, just last week, the commissioner for the Border Patrol, in charge of the U.S. Border Patrol, he tweeted about the border and just said, "Hey, we're stopping, criminals from crossing." And Twitter deleted his tweet. They took down his tweet. And so they're saying, "Hey, this is a national security risk. Twitter is endangering national security." But going back to, and there's a little bit of echo right now, I don't know why. But going back to the election a little bit. So we were talking about what happened in Wisconsin and Michigan, and they suddenly gained 100,000 votes. And I tweeted this 20 minutes ago, Josh, and I got a huge response. I got 600 likes, which is a lot for me recently. But anyway, so someone tweeted back and says, "Here, see for yourself." So they're showing a map with the votes, or a tabulation of the votes. So it's showing that Joe Biden. So all these votes came in, right? These new votes. So another 140,000 votes were counted, and none of those 140,000 went to Trump. They all went to Biden. So that's kind of suspect. And then someone commented below, "This map has been proven false," but that's kind of shady. Let's look at the electoral map and just kind of do a brief overview. So So when I was on the live stream just now in Brazil, we were looking at this map, and I have the NBC News one up, Decision 2020. So look, we're at 213. Trump has 213. So Georgia, I don't know why they haven't called Georgia for Trump. Okay, he's up 100,000. There's 92% of the vote in, so that's 16 electoral votes, and then North Carolina most likely is going to be Trump, and then if Trump wins Pennsylvania, between those three, if you add that up, that's I believe 267.
Yeah,
Let me just
I'm currently looking at what might happen here. So it depends on what's happening in Nebraska too, and Maine's final district, whether Trump gets that or not. But I'm currently looking at the 270 to win thing. I've been sort of playing around with it all for about the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
Looking at if Biden can win Michigan and Wisconsin, then that gives him the win 270 to 268. yeah, I know, right? I was just sitting looking at it being like, oh, this is not going to go well. So it's like, as far as
now, Nevada's really close too.
You think so? Like
Nevada's, Nevada's 6 electoral votes. So let's say, okay, here's one scenario. Scenario one:
Nevada,
Trump gets North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Maine.
Yeah.
So that brings us to 268.
Yeah.
And then if you throw in Nevada, that pushes Trump over the top.
Yeah, the Nevada's currently saying they've got estimated 86% reporting with an 8,000 vote lead for Joe Biden. I am not sure whether there's like places that are heavily pro-Trump or pro-Biden that are yet to come in, because I guess that becomes the big question, like where are the votes that are still to come from? Are they mail-in ballots, or are they on the day voting? Like, yeah.
So really what it comes down to is right now, okay, Pennsylvania, I think Pennsylvania, it's going to be at least until Friday or longer till they declare, but I'm pretty sure even with fraud, it'd be hard to overcome that 700,000 vote difference. But there's still 1 million votes that need to be counted, so who knows? But so let's say Pennsylvania is good for Trump, and then, but with Wisconsin, Michigan, I think that's where we can see maybe the legal action, maybe the Supreme Court come in. I'm not sure exactly about how the process works, but I think Wisconsin and Michigan might see some of that legal action or legal appeals.
Yeah, I guess Michigan's the one, and Nevada are the two with the most left to declare that could go either way at this moment in time. It's I'm not sure why they haven't called Georgia. It looks fairly sewed up, as does North Carolina. But I guess I know a lot of places are trying to be a little bit cautious in declaring a victor. Like they took forever to declare Florida last night, even though it seemed like it was done early on. But yeah, it's a weird one. I do not know what is gonna happen. Like, it's insane.
It's stressful. I was listening to the radio, and they're saying that in California, like there's like a hotline, like counseling services or whatever, and 85% of the calls are like election anxiety. Like people are stressed about this election.
Oh man, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I feel like I'd probably be on edge if it was my country. It's a little less terrifying for me, looking from the outside.
Yeah. And in Arizona, I mean, so I live in Arizona, and I went to an election party last night, and it was a Republican election party, and we were mad at. We have a state chairwoman for the GOP, for the Republican Party, and her name is Kelly Ward, and some people are angry at her because, we actually were gonna. Right now, we have one Republican senator and one Democrat senator here, but this astronaut guy, Mark Kelly, looks like he's going to win. He's a Democrat, and he's a huge gun grabber. Like, he's against gun violence, but he wants to take away the Second Amendment. So we might end up with two Democrat senators in Arizona. But in Arizona, other local things just kind of interesting. So Arizona voted on Prop 207 and 208. And 207 was dealing with weed. So as of yesterday, or as of today, weed is now, recreational marijuana is legal in Arizona, so that you can carry like a little ounce bag, or I don't know how much exactly, and that's legal. And I'm not really for that, because like they're like, oh well, we'll bring money into the economy, like the tax or whatever, but I just don't see having weed is conducive to a functioning society. The medical argument for it is good, I guess. Like, oh, the government shouldn't regulate what you put in your body. But then it goes back to like, well, should the government legislate morality? Are you a libertarian? And then also we passed Prop 208, which is basically a tax, an increase on tax for small businesses of like 8%, and that's really bad for the economy. But keep in mind, in Arizona, Maricopa County, every year, Josh, 100,000 people move into Maricopa County. 100,000, like one of the fastest growing parts of the U.S. anywhere. So we get a lot of influx from California, from New York. So the demographic change has been a lot. But yeah, so Arizona approved recreational marijuana, and we voted to increase taxes. So those are a few local things that we did.
Yeah, those are two fairly blue policies, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
I mean, the legalization of marijuana, I think, is more about just being able to do what you want. Like, I mean, it's to a lot of people no more harmful than alcohol, and they sort of just think, well,
yeah,
if it's a plant and the most dangerous thing that can happen is that you're caught with it, like, you should probably just let people do what they want.
Yeah.
I'm just looking, actually, interestingly here, I'm looking at the Senate race in Michigan to try and get an idea of like how the other races in that state are going. So John James, who's running for one of the Senate seats in Michigan, is currently leading by
I actually know someone. Last night I was talking to someone who knows John James, and so she was really excited about that, because I think he's going to win.
Yeah.
Looks like he's going to win.
Yeah, but that, I mean, he's like that would indicate that perhaps there's some, maybe they're going to go, or maybe it'll turn red in the end. I don't know. It's such a.
Yeah. Hey, the good news though, Josh. So in South Carolina, Lindsey Graham is a longtime senator, and he won. And guess how much money his opponent spent on this Senate race? An obscene amount. The opponent spent $104 million. I kid you not, for a U.S. Senate race.
104.
That is astronomical. That is a really bad ROI.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't get what you didn't even get the seat. I mean, I think I read last night that Joe Biden's campaign had spent like $106 million, or not 106, $104 million on campaign or on ad buys in Florida. So that was clear. That clearly worked.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what do you honestly think this means? Because a few years ago, because I think you can draw conclusions already, regardless of who actually ends up winning this. Like, it's quite clear that that there has not been like the wholesale rejection of Donald Trump that a lot of people perhaps expected, including myself at one point. And I guess last time this happened, I was just looking at it and being like, well, people just hate Hillary Clinton, or people just, they were so sick of the Democratic Party's just establishment candidate that they just said, no, this one time we're just going to say screw it, we're going to throw a spanner in the works and fuck you all, basically. But this kind of seems like it's suggesting that it's something more than that. I mean, it feels more like it's a wholesale rejection of the idea that you could, like, the media, and I hate that. Sometimes I hate this narrative where people are like, oh, we're just trying to get back at the media, and we're just we don't like the mainstream media telling us what to do, and at the same time, I'm a little bit like they were so in favor of Joe Biden, and they couldn't even like get him I wouldn't call it they couldn't get him any sort of like clear victory against if you just watched, I don't know, CNN or MSNBC for a few days, like you get well, maybe he is, but like the Donald Trump is the worst, most corrupt, least competent, most offensive to everybody on the planet president that is ever great, or a politician that has ever decided to grace public office. And yet, here it is, 66 million people thus far have voted for him, and all the votes haven't been counted. Like, That's
Yeah,
that's
and
13 million
it's
more people than
surprising.
last time actually, and I hadn't even clocked how much higher that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
And then, I think it's really interesting. So, with yeah, I mean, Trump has been characterized as this racist, and what's funny is his biggest demographic change this election has been amongst the minorities. He's actually lost more white voters this election, so he's not doing very well. If he's if he is a white supremacist, he's not getting the white vote. um, so yeah, I think like you say, last time it was kind of like, hey, anyone but Hillary, and it was kind of a gamble. Hey, well, let's give this guy a shot, and I think the people have seen with the trade deals and his actions that he's going to fall through. So I think for the next 4 years, I mean, he can really, if he wins, which I hope he wins, he can really take the gloves off and really get a lot of good things done. And then we have the Supreme Court. But regardless, even if he loses, we still have the Supreme Court, and that's a legacy that he'll leave. But yeah, I mean, this is really a movement, and I think I heard someone on the radio say, like, even if Trump loses, like the people who supported him, like he awoken this like sleeping giant. These people, the silent majority, who are just fed up with everything that's going on. So I mean, those people are not going away. Trump might go away or might lose, whatever. Um, but these people are not going away, and so I think that's the birth of a new movement, a new generation. People are sick of this, DC controlling the entire country. It's kind of like the Hunger Games, that movie with, the Hunger Games where Pan Am or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
where this capital controls everybody and everybody else is, starving. So yeah, I'm optimistic right now because I think with Florida and Pennsylvania, Trump's chances go up. But yeah, with Michigan and going back to the let's look at the Senate again. Yeah, going back to Michigan, I think Michigan and Wisconsin might see some legal challenges. Um, let's see for the Senate. Hang on, Wyoming, Colorado. Um, yeah, I think the Senate's looking pretty good. We'll see what happens with that. But what else was I gonna say?
Senate's
What else
tied
did we on?
47
Oh yeah,
47.
okay. So last night, yeah, it's tied 47. Last night at 2:30 a.m., Trump gave a speech, like a 10-minute speech, and so CNN was like declaring it as like, oh, Trump declared victory erroneously. Like, no, he didn't declare total victory. He did not. If you listen to his 10-minute speech, he all he said was, hey, I really think that we won in Georgia and North Carolina. I don't know why they haven't called it. That's what he said. And then he was like, we are going to challenge some things in the court. And so CNN was like, well, Trump erroneously declares victory, and we don't know why he wants to challenge things in the Supreme Court. Well, because you have the highest voter turnout ever, and you have more mail-in ballots than ever before, which increases the potential for voter fraud. So like, I mean, if I were him, even if you didn't support Trump, if you got the Supreme Court there with your majority, your conservative majority, why wouldn't you dispute results if you have the Supreme Court backing you, right?
Yeah, I
It'd be dumb not to.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's going to get into. I'm not sure exactly what the legal challenges will be in Michigan and Wisconsin, but I guess we'll see. It's to do with spoiled ballots, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and like in 2000, it was the Chads, the hanging parts of the ballots, and I think I'm not sure on the legal details and how that works. But in Pennsylvania yesterday, there was workers. People showed up to vote, and the workers was like, "Oh, the machines don't work, but you can give me your ballot, and I'll turn it in." Sure. So the people are like, "No, no, we're not going to just give you our ballot." So they waited, and magically the machine started working again. So
Yeah, I mean, there's. I think everyone's so paranoid about something, about someone trying to pull something, that there's going to be questions raised about absolutely every tiny thing that just seems like a tiny discrepancy or a tiny like error or
yeah,
some word that someone said wrong, or until there's like a real clear picture has emerged of like what the reality is. Like I think everyone's just gonna jump on every tiny thing as see they're trying to call it for Trump, or see look they're rigging it for Biden. Like I think that's going to be the general theme until we have a
Well, I had direct experience with that yesterday, Josh, and we yesterday I was working at a campaigning outside of a poll location in Phoenix. I was just giving out flyers for someone running for mayor of Phoenix. And in Arizona and in other states, you have to, or at least in Arizona, you have to be 75 feet beyond the polling location. So they measure out from the door. It happened to be at a school, so you measure out 75 feet. So I got there like 9:30 a.m. 9:30 a.m. I set up my little camping chair. I was giving flyers out, and then about a half hour later, the poll worker comes out and he moves the sign. So there's a little sign there. It said 75 feet, and I assumed it was in the right place. But he came out and he was measuring it by putting one foot in front of the other. So he measured out.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so he did that, and then so I moved my chair, okay, and I was in a less advantageous position to talk to people there farther out, and then 20 minutes later, another poll worker comes out, and I asked her, I'm like, hey, why did you move it back farther away? And then I'm like, can I take your picture? And then I took her picture, and then she's like, that's against the law. You cannot take my picture. I'm going to call the police, and I'm going to take your phone away. And I'm like, really? So I can't. Anyways, I don't know if there's a law about that. Supposedly there is, but like if poll workers are committing fraud and you can't take a picture of them, it was kind of sketch. And then there were some poll observers there as well. So when I first arrived, there was like 3 poll observers from like Oregon, and I think they were like more left leaning, like Democrat. And right off the bat, the supervisor was like, "Are you Republican?" I'm like, "You're a poll observer. Why is that? Why do you care?" And she's like, "Oh, are you a mole?" I'm like, "No, I'm not a mole." But it's funny because she didn't know that I used to work for Project Veritas. If she did, she freaked out. But yeah, so I witnessed firsthand, I mean, some of the irregularities, and I documented it, and I submitted a report to my Arizona Attorney General. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of fraud going on. But on the good side, I mean, at least there's a really huge voter turnout, so it's good to see people, participating in the civic process. But yeah, we gotta wait and see, I guess. A lot of it's just waiting until Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd be reluctant to say that there was a lot of voter fraud going on until I'd see some evidence of it. Like, there's not much.
Yeah.
Like, it's all idle speculation until there's some evidence or someone saying, yeah, this is obvious what we're doing. Like, one of the things actually last night I noticed while I was on Twitter was the really funny meltdown that was going on when people who had been like, there is no way Donald Trump can win this at about what would have been like 6 or 7 o'clock UK time, that by about 2 or 3 a.m. it was just like despair had descended upon Twitter. They were like, this is 2016 all over again. And I was like, I don't know how you didn't believe that was like possible. Like, I didn't think it was the most likely outcome, but I didn't think it was impossible at all. Like, I got taught that in 2016. And I'd been listening to, everyone was also just talking about the CNN coverage, and I was like, is that seriously what you're watching? Like, there's so many great indie news outlets and like people doing things online that are just giving way better analysis than CNN. Like, I was flitting between a couple. I was flitting between watching the Young Turks, actually, because what's his name, John Iadarola, gives fantastic like precinct by precinct breakdowns when you really want to get like technical about it. So I was like dropping in to listen to what he had to say. I was listening to a little bit of the Daily Wire. I was watching Joe Rogan's live stream with Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk, and so there's stuff from all over the political spectrum providing really great analysis, and everyone's just watching fucking CNN.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I watched the Steven Crowder's live stream yesterday. He had like 500,000 people viewing it, and then Facebook doing, I was watching, and then Facebook shut down his live stream.
Really?
So it dropped from like 500,000 like 350,000. Yeah, and he had a great live stream. And if you got 500,000 live viewers, that just totally eclipses like anything CNN could put out. So yeah, it's good to get some analysis. It's funny because I'm trying to do some live streams with people on Twitter, and like this morning with Brazil, like that just popped up randomly. It wasn't planned. But this other guy, I'm trying to just kind of funny side note. So the guy I'm trying to do a live stream with, he's like, he wants to do a Twitter live stream, and then he wants to plan it. So I gave him my link to schedule an interview, and like he's like, "Oh, I don't use links. I hate that, like the Calendly." And then this morning I'm like, "Hey, let me know if email me or here's my link. My schedule's booking up fast." And he's like, "Are you trying to tell me there's only 10 left? So act fast." I'm like I've never met this guy. I think he's a nice guy. I think hopefully we can talk, but it's tough when you're just DMing. It's like I prefer like having this conversation with you over just some Twitter DM. But yeah, these influencers, it's a big time to really discuss the analysis of the election, and I think Tim Pool as well. Tim Pool has some great analysis. I was on his show actually about 2 weeks ago, and he invited me to his election night stream, but I wasn't able to make it out to Washington D.C. But yeah, I mean it's right now it's a busy time. I'm probably gonna go take a nap after this interview actually, and because I got like 3 or 4 hours of sleep. I went to bed at like midnight or 1 a.m. and woke up at like 4:30 for some reason. Probably that election anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, I sat up till about 6 or 6:15 a.m. UK time, and then decided to call it a day. But there's I'm just seeing there's some breaking news. USPS data appears to show a failure to deliver mail ballots from voters across the country on election day.
What website are you on?
I'm just on Twitter. It's there's just a live update. USPS says there was some 300,000 ballots that lacked a delivery scan. So there's like 300,000 ballots that they still are gonna try to bring in. Okay. Right. Things is gonna get interesting.
That's a lot of votes. Let me hang on. USPS regards court order. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, fails to meet court. Yeah, USPS fails to meet court deadline to sweep for mail-in ballots, prompting questions about how many votes will not be counted. Washington Post. The U.S. Postal Service turned down a federal judge's order late Tuesday afternoon to sweep mail processing facilities serving 15 states, saying instead it would stick to its own inspection schedule. The court order came after the agency disclosed that more than 300,000 ballots nationwide could not be traced. So basically, a judge was like, "Hey, there's all these missing ballots. Where are they? Can you guys check all your facilities nationwide?" And then Postal Service was like, "No, we're good." So we're gonna do it our own way. Okay. And then
I mean, Trump is right now putting out an email. President Trump helps you. We're emailing to ask you to step up one last time and defend your president. It's no secret the Democrats will try to steal this election. They can't stand the thought of America rejecting their candidate, so they'll do whatever. Yeah, there's some questions building online about voter counting. But a lot of people are noting that this is literally only happening on Twitter, that not even Fox News have engaged in this yet. It's going to get interesting. But you sound tired, man. Let's wrap this up. That was a good solid little chat, and yeah, let's call it a day, and you can go get some sleep, and maybe we'll all know a little more in a few more hours.
Yeah, I mean, Nevada's not. They're not going to know Nevada until Thursday. So it's just a waiting game at this point. I mean, we won't know much until Friday. I don't think I'm going to agonize. Try not to agonize too much over the details. But I appreciate the interview. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and I hope everything's going well where you're at.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Same to you. It was a pleasure. Okay, so right, Mike.
Thanks so much for listening. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast and to our mailing list. And don't forget, my book, Brexit, The Establishment Civil War, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description below. Until next time, thanks for listening.